Hey guys, how's it going? So me and Mir are going to address a very popular topic this week, and it's all because Daigo got his hitbox banned from Combo Breaker. And this is actually a very old topic, Mir, that I wanted to talk to you about a long time ago, but now everyone's like aware of it now, and now everyone is chiming in on their own opinions. And basically, we're going to be talking about the rules and restrictions of using custom or specific joysticks in the tournament scene right now for not just Street Fighter V, but a bunch of fighting games, and what we think is basically crossing the line, and what you guys think about this as well. And yeah, I don't know how we should start this off though, Amir, because I'm assuming that a lot of people already know about this, but maybe I should do a Cliff Notes story of Daigo and what happened with this joystick.
Yeah, well, because I think the reason why there's a lot of confusion is because Capcom's statement was also confusing because it was super vague.
Yes, yes, it was. Because I mean, I guess they just didn't know what to do, you know?
Yeah, they didn't want to accidentally ban other controllers, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like they need someone to consult with them or something to figure out this rule set. But we'll talk about that side in a bit here. Yeah, I guess I'll just tell the Daigo story real quick, guys. But keep in mind, I'll leave some links in the video description that show some great comparisons with visual and all that, and pictures and all that, better than I can explain it, because I don't use a hitbox myself. With hitbox versus joystick versus controller and all that jazz in the video description. So, for a bit now, Daigo picked up a hitbox, and he was discovering all the benefits and advantages he had with it. He's like, wow, this is really cool. I can do this, I can do that. And then he just kind of lost it and took it to the next level. He really pushed the limits of it. And he got like this modified hitbox. I think it was a Gafro Hitbox. And even still, it wasn't an issue until Daigo really took it to the next level and started adding a whole bunch of buttons and macros to the stick.
Yeah.
So, like, no exaggeration, Daigo had a hitbox where he had 3 up buttons. 3. He used the other 2 up buttons so they were close to his kicks, so he can do faster flash kicks with medium kick or heavy kick. He added an extra left direction, an extra right direction, so he can double tap his dashes with his right hand rather than his left. He added a 2 punch button and a 2 kick button in the middle of his joystick, so he has faster access to the EX version of his flash kicks, and he can skip neutral during the flash kick. And, well, you guys get the idea. He just had a lot of crazy macros. The joystick had so many buttons on it. It looked like a bishibashi machine. And it was just like an abomination Frankenstein joystick, pretty much.
It almost looked like one of Sako's joysticks.
Don't worry, we're going to get into that too. That's why I want to talk about this. Because, like I said, we talked about this before. But anyways, so, Daigo's pretty much, he said himself, he wanted to push the absolute limits of this because he's like, man, this is kind of a gray line here. We don't really know what's legal or not for these joysticks, right? Because now, Daigo's like, can I do this or that? And so before he went to Combo Breaker last week, the big premier tournament, he asked them, hey, is it okay if I use this stick, right? He asked Capcom, basically, got his translator to ask, and his manager, I mean, and basically everything was good. They made sure the PCB and all that was in line with the rules and stuff. But after more consideration on what he actually modified his stick with, and when they realized, then they're like, whoa, Daigo, no, we don't know exactly the implications of what this can cause if you use this stick, so for now, it's banned, right? Because a lot of people were talking about this before Daigo even entered the tournament, and yeah, Daigo was cool with it. It wasn't a big deal. Like, it wasn't like Daigo was angry, and it was nobody's fault. It was just that, Daigo's a big name, and now it's come to everyone's attention. And these sticks have been used in some tournaments before. It's just that no one really cared until Daigo tried it, right?
Daigo said before that he's not morally invested in the hitbox. Like he said, he doesn't, or at least as far as he says, he's not. He doesn't care if the hitbox eventually gets banned, but if it doesn't, then he just believes that it gives a big advantage to whoever uses it as opposed to other controllers.
Right.
So he was planning to use it in case it wouldn't get banned, right?
Right.
And he definitely stirred up some conversation.
Oh yeah.
Of the topic again, which is exactly what he wanted too, because he said that as well. He said
it is.
He wanted the community to discuss this issue, I guess, this matter.
Right, because if if they're not going to enforce it, he's just going to use it. Like, why not,
yeah,
right?
I mean, as a competitor, he's got all the rights to take all the steps necessary to get
Exactly.
the best advantage, right?
And it's not like he tried weaseling in the tournament in a cloak and then he was like had to stick and was hiding it from people or something like that. He literally asked before he entered. So another thing too, guys, is you have to understand Daigo. He's like, he's kind of Daigo's really all about min-maxing. He's really hardcore and trying to squeeze out every little advantage he can with his character. So now that he was explaining that when he was using his hitbox, it just felt so refreshing, learning something new. So that's why he was really trying to min-max, and that's why he was adding all the crazy buttons, because he's like, man, if only this, I had this and this. So yeah, it just really snowballed from there. So I guess now, Mir, the second thing we should start talking about is, well, we can talk about the different firmware. Let's talk about the different firmware. You can go ahead on that, and then we'll talk about the differences after.
Well, okay, so one critique, I guess, that was moved towards hitboxes was that since you don't have an analog controller for the directions, right? You press buttons instead, your buttons on the left side.
Yeah.
Then you'd be able to hold both left and right at the same time, as well as down and up, which is something you cannot do on normal controllers or arcade sticks, I should say.
Right.
And so there is something in the hardware, like in the PCB of the controller, that prevents that from happening. And I forget how it's called.
SOCD cleaner or something like that?
Oh yeah, because it's something about opposite cardinal directions cleaner.
Right.
Which basically on a normal hitbox, like a standard hitbox with the 4 directional buttons on the left and the others on the right, if you hold both left and right at the same time, they cancel each other out. So it's like neutral, like as if you weren't holding anything.
Yeah.
And if you hold down and up at the same time, it prioritizes up. So this prevents you from blocking both left and right at the same time, which is not a problem in Street Fighter V because a lot of modern games have it programmed in the actual games mechanics that you cannot block both directions at the same time. But there are other games that don't have this. An example is Marvel 3.
Yep. People
I'm
have
sure
using that for a bit.
before.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like this is what the this system does on a normal hitbox. But on Daigo's stick, on the Gafro Hitbox, apparently uses a different version of this firmware, which is called Last Win, I think.
Yeah.
Which makes it so that if you're holding left and right, it inputs the last direction you've pressed. So basically, you can hold left, for example, to charge for a sonic boom, and then press right, and as opposed to a normal hitbox where that would be just neutral direction, like no directions. On the Gafro box, it registers as right. So you can do right and a punch and do your sonic boom, then release the right direction, and you're immediately back to charging. Which of course is an advantage as opposed to a normal arcade fight stick.
Yes.
But then again, a lot of people have moved the counter argument that you can do this on a PS4 pad. if you're good with it. I mean, there's people that can do it with one hand. A lot of people do it with 2 hands, where you're holding back on the analog stick, and then you press right on the D-pad.
Right.
As well as a punch. And then you let go of the D-pad and you're back to charge. So it is mechanically intensive, I guess, but it's still possible. Like, it's much easier, of course, on a hitbox with that system, right? Because you just need 2 fingers.
Right.
But yeah, it is possible.
Okay, so a lot of you guys probably are confused right now because Amir just explained a lot of crazy things on the 3 differences on pad, hitbox, and the Gafro, right? And like I said, it's hard to summarize. That's why we had some video links below. But basically, what made hitbox legal for tournaments is that you can't block both directions at once. Like Mir said, if you hold left or right on the hitbox, your character will just go neutral. It'll cancel itself out. And even with this Gafro, even with that, where Mir says you can hold back and you can press forward, even that was kind of okay because, like you said, the PS4 controller also uses the last win as well, where you hold back on the D-pad and you can still move around with the joystick and it's still the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you ban the Gafro thing, that means you have to ban pad, controller pad, PS4 controller too, because it uses the same thing, right? And there's even players that they have like certain postures with their hand where they can do it really easily with one hand. There are definitely pro players on pad that abuse this for sure. But the thing is that Daigo took it to the next level because he actually added buttons to the stick that made it much easier to abuse this. Much easier. We're talking guy walking forward and doing super, during a Sonic Hurricane, right? Or crazy things. There's like instant blocking where you're down backing and you're blocking immediately when you're walking forward, and just a lot of things like that. So I guess now, I guess we should just start with that, Mir, on like what we think is fair or not. So like I said, the hard debate right now is this last win. Compared, like, on pad compared to the Gafro. Like, are you okay with this if you don't add any macros to it? Because it's still an advantage.
The big problem with discussing controllers like this and these kind of inputs and alternative firmware and whatever is that as long as there's no countermeasure inside the game to prevent this from working, I mean, it's really hard to argue against it, right? Like, for example, blocking left and right at the same time.
Yeah.
There is something in the game that prevents you from doing it.
Yeah.
Right? So even if your controller is able to do it, it's no problem, right? Because the game just prevents you from doing it.
Right.
But in other cases, like charging that fast because of how you can release the buttons on a hitbox or on a Gafro box especially, there's nothing in the game to prevent that. I'm not even sure if it would be that easy to implement something that would be fair for all controllers, right? Without screwing it up for someone else. So it's a slippery slope basically, because as soon as you allow something, as soon as you allow something, then it's like, oh, I can do this and this other thing because it's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
And we'll end up with, I don't know, one button supers soon enough.
That's a big slippery slope.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it could go there. I'm personally okay with a controller that is able to emulate whatever a pad can do. So if the pad can charge at the same time, not charge at the same time, but you can do this thing where you're holding two directions at once, then I guess it's fine, because you cannot prevent people from using a PS4 pad. That'd be outrageous, right? Like, you can't force a person to buy $100+ stick just to enter a tournament.
Right.
I think that'd be crazy.
That would be
unless unless you put something in the game to prevent that working. Like, you do something with the pad so that you cannot do it, and then at that point you can say, well, if some other controller can do it, then it's not allowed, right? So I personally feel like that's the way to go. Like, it just allow a controller that can do the exact same things a pad can. And hitbox in that sense is fine, because a D-pad is kind of the same thing, I guess, as the hitbox control scheme for directions.
Yeah.
But, I mean, at the same time, adding buttons on top of what the hitbox already has.
That's what I'm saying, because the hitbox has 4 directions, but a PS4 controller technically has 8, because you have the left joystick as well, the left analog stick. Yeah. So with the Gafro, it would be 8. Would you consider that legal? Because it's the same thing, but it'd be so much more efficient.
Yeah, exactly. That's the big problem, because I guess you could argue that if you had a stick that had both an analog stick and the 4 buttons, then it'd be just like a pad, right?
Right.
Because technically a pad doesn't have 2 D-pads. It has an analog stick and a D-pad.
Right.
So maybe you could make the argument that it's not quite like a PS4 pad. That could be a way to kind of like soft ban that kind of configuration, right? Because
such a headache.
The crazy thing is that you can just double tap a direction to get the dash, and you can do it with your right hand or your left hand, and then Daigo has 3 up buttons, and then like all other kinds of crazy stuff, right?
Yeah.
What would prevent them from adding a button that that's like, I don't know, like you have 2 light punches at one point, right? Or 3 heavy punches, because that's the most convenient for you. Like maybe for certain characters that have to hold certain buttons, like Birdie and and stuff. Like I could see this becoming extremely difficult to regulate really soon.
Right. But it's
And
like it's not like we have 8, top 8 players all using Hitbox.
That's only because they don't know yet.
Because they don't know yet. I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, what really makes this a problem is the PS4 controller or the pad in general. That's what makes it a problem. Because if you try to twist the rules so you can't do this, then if you apply it to the PS4 controller, then everything falls apart. That's really the problem. Yeah. Let's rewind a bit though. Back in like the Street Fighter 4 days, where plinking and slinking, and using your select button to plink, right? And we had people like Sako, for example, literally have his select button next to his light punch, so that he can slink his and plink the light punch. In case you guys don't know, you can't plink light punch in Street Fighter 4 unless you use the select button, right? Or the start button.
Because it's how the priority system.
Yeah, because the priority system. So crafty players would put the select button next to their, because it's really hard to use your select button to plink when it's like on the front of your stick, right? They did that intentionally, so it's hard to hit. So players were doing that, and even I thought, I'm like, hey man, this is crossing the line. I'm like, it's sick that something will go on. Like, this is crossing the line, man.
I guess that's again, that's hard to argue against, because if they really didn't want you to select plink, then they could have just fixed the glitch, right?
Not gonna happen.
No, I know. In fact, they haven't fixed it yet. But in Street Fighter 5 too. Yeah. It just so happens that we're lucky enough that we don't need to plink.
Right.
But otherwise, and you don't want to plink, guys. Like I remember doing that.
Oh, I don't know if it was Tokido or Daigo, but one of them had 3 select buttons on their stick. Like, come on, Mir. Come on, man. This is 4 or 5 years ago.
It is hard to argue against it. But if I were the one to choose, I wouldn't allow it.
I don't know, man. It's too much. It's too much.
Yeah, like I understand that it's hard to kind of like find a default configuration that you can agree on. This is what a fight stick should look like.
Right.
Because then, maybe some new stick comes out that has an additional feature that is also on the PS4 pad, but those sticks don't have it. So what's the best stick? Oh, this is the best stick. This is like some ones have the touchpad on it, right?
Yeah.
Others don't. So I understand that can be a big headache, but I mean, adding new buttons, adding like 3 select buttons and new directions and stuff, I think that's a little bit, like crossing the line. I feel like that's more agreeable than,
for sure.
Other stuff like, we shouldn't ban the hitbox. I can see that being.
What about keyboards? You think keyboards should be banned?
Well, I mean, how can you? Like the only problem is that
that wasn't like a loaded question. I was just like, I'm just saying that, like, look, the hitbox.
The only problem is that they don't work well with PS4.
No,
right? Otherwise more people would be using them.
Bluetooth.
Maybe they make, if they do that. What's it called? That China tournament on PC again this year. Maybe we could all go there with keyboards and just screw them up.
Final Fighters China. Oh man, I can't wait.
Yeah, because they don't have the drivers, and then
they probably don't care what stick you use.
Shut down, and then Windows updates.
I can't wait, man. I can't wait for that tournament. Okay, so another thing too, guys, is that people don't just buy hitbox sticks just so they can cheat or they want an unfair advantage. The original intention of the hitbox, I'm assuming, was for players that were used to using keyboard. They don't want to use a joystick. They just want to use all buttons. It's just more comfortable. But when you do that, you just notice that there's going to be some slight advantages, just like how we noticed with pad as the Street Fighter titles became more accessible. I mean, the pad is going to give you a huge advantage in like Third Strike, for example, where like inputs were more exact and there wasn't input leniency and all that. I mean, but now that there is, now you can directly compare it. And I would even argue now that joystick would give you some more advantages over pad on certain things, even in Street Fighter 5. Like, for example, I'd say Monot would be better played on joystick, whereas Guile would be probably better on pad. Like these, one difference, I guess we should talk about the differences now, is, okay, the thing about pad is that when you have the D-pad, your movement is a lot quicker, more responsive, because you're not using something, like you're not using a joystick, right? Where you have to put a amount of pressure on it where you can reach a direction, and going back and forth would take some time. So on a D-pad, on a regular pad, your left-right movement is a lot quicker. Your dashing is a lot quicker, right? Than on a joystick. But joystick also has the benefit of having all 6 or 8 buttons right in front of you at finger's length. You know, and that's why these games have some macros, like the 3 punch or 3 kick button. They're for pad, so they have access to the buttons when it's a lot harder to hit multiple buttons at once on pad. Joystick has the benefit of double tapping as well. Much easier.
Then you could argue that you're gonna have controllers like, I think it's called the Hori Commander, Fight Commander, I think.
Okay.
Which is their pad, which has it's got a D-pad and it's got all the 8 buttons in front.
Interesting.
So would that be cheating? That's the
I don't know. There's the mixed box as well.
Personally, I don't think it is. The Hori Commander.
I think I've heard of this. Yes. And
because I mean, if you think about it, like just to complete the thought, but it's just like the PS4 controls not realigned, but rearranged, basically. So it's a PS4 controller. Actually, I don't think it has an analog stick, so it's worse because you cannot do that trick.
Right.
But again, like, it's really easy to find something that just goes a little bit too far beyond, right, and say that should be banned. So
yeah. So now we also have pads, right, that are trying to have best of both worlds, where they'll have all 6 face buttons on the front, like the Mad Catz pad and the Hori pad as well. Those ones too. So like I said, one simple example, guys, with advantage on pad with Guile, for example. Guile's always a great example for these because he charge character. So you can charge back with the D-pad, and then while you're charging, right, you press forward and do your sonic boom, but while you're doing this, you're holding back on the left joystick, so you're charging at the first possible frame, so you're able to charge faster than someone would on a joystick, because you have access to 8 directions rather than 4 directional buttons. So this is where the hitbox comes in, right? This is why everyone's talking about the hitbox. So the hitbox, so now that I explained that, hey, pad has some advantages over joystick and vice versa, the hitbox actually takes the best of both worlds and has advantage over both, because now you have access. Now your directions are buttons, and you have the joystick layout of the 6 or 8 buttons in front of you. Now you can do both, right? I guess the only thing is that you're only limited, like you don't have 2 lefts or 2 rights, right? Like a D-pad. But for the most part, hitbox is the best of both worlds. Now, the thing is that even though it's an advantage, it is an advantage. I don't think anyone argued that it's not. But how much of an advantage is it? Is it enough that, hey, this is considered cheating? I don't think so, honestly. But if you guys want, we can talk about what these advantages are, and you guys can say yourself, like decide yourself. I'll give you some quick examples, okay? So one is, of course, the dashing. So if you want to dash or backdash on hitbox, you can simply double tap it, because now it's a button, and your character will just suddenly do it. Now on joystick, there's kind of this little tell when someone wants to dash. They'll have to go back to neutral, right? Sometimes twice to dash. Like if someone's walking forward and he has to dash forward, you'll kind of see him kind of stall for a second and then dash. And back when he does it backwards, for example. But on hitbox, right, your character could be walking forward, all of a sudden, boom, it just dashes in. Let's say like Ken, for example, his dash is 15 frames. This is another way of saying it. His dash is 15 frames. But technically, with the joystick, there's a little, it's kind of like almost like 16, 17 frames because of the input itself. But on a hitbox, it's actually 15 frames. Like, it's going to be a burst of speed. And it's not that crazy of an advantage, but it's just a slight. I mean, what do you think about that?
I mean, again, I understand. Like, it is a clear advantage, right?
Yes, it is.
But it's in the limits of how the controller is set up, basically. Like, it does make sense for how the controller is made.
Yeah.
And it's... I don't want to say it's not a big problem, because it could be it's difficult to word it in a way where
I know, right? I know.
Like, there are other things that you could argue that are easier on, right? For example, to do 360s or 720s.
Yeah.
Like, trying to do it on a hitbox, it's much harder, right? Because you have to actually press the directions in a different way. Right? So you could argue that there are things that the stick does better than the hitbox, even though there might be more limited or less of them, right?
Right.
So...
But as long as you can make that argument, that's good.
Yeah,
That's good, right?
yeah, exactly. Don't play Zangief if you play Hitbox. Actually, I've seen people play Zangief on a Hitbox.
There's some people are beast, man, doing that on keyboard, the directional keys. Oh my god, just beast
Yeah.
mode. I've tried doing it, guys, because I was too lazy to hook up my joystick sometimes. Not good. Not good.
But then again, I guess I should mention something.
What's up?
We're talking about the Hitbox and the Gafro box and controllers and stuff in the scope of Street Fighter V.
Right.
But then there are other games that, other fighting games, that in which this advantage is much more pronounced.
Give me an
like I
example.
feel like, for example, for the Hitbox, right, the fact that you have access to the buttons, like to the directions, sorry, as buttons, makes a big difference. For example, say in Tekken.
Tekken.
Because
Okay.
in Tekken, there are very technical movement inputs. For example, you are allowed to do running moves when point blank if you input forward 3 times extremely fast, as well as the button in question, right? I don't know, I'm going to make a lot of examples, but a classic would be Dragunov, right? Dragunov, as in his while running 2, like the running punch.
Uh-huh.
It's really well known because it's plus and block and all of that, right? It's a good move, counter hit launcher. And being able to do it from point blank is extremely important, because if you get 4-4-2, which is the dashing version, that's punishable. So you don't want to do that.
Oh.
If you get 4-2 as a high instead of a mid, right? So there's like, you want to do it consistently every time. And it is hard because you have to do it extremely fast.
So what's the
And-
input? 3 forwards? Direction?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. So on a stick, you have to do forward, neutral, forward, and 2. And to do it really fast, it's difficult. But on a hitbox, you can just press right, release the button, press right, release the button, press right again, and 2.
Yeah.
And it just comes up, right? It's much easier. And there are other examples like that, especially because Tekken is.
Anyway. Okay, so what about electrics though? Because
Well,
you
I
have to go to
mean,
neutral on that too.
Yes, I was just about to say, like, Tekken is much more technical on inputs because there's less, not input buffering, but less input leniency.
Yeah.
It's way less lenient. So, yeah, like an electric is forward, neutral, down, forward, or in case of, I don't know, Kazuya is forward, neutral, down, forward. So you can argue that that's easier to do on a hitbox too, and it's much easier to do on both sides as well, right?
Right.
Because that's a big thing for Tekken. There's a lot of players that are maybe really good on player 1 side or player 2 side, because on a stick, right, you use different muscles for the left and right side.
Yeah.
So you're pulling on the right side and you're pushing on the left side. No, sorry, the opposite. But on a hitbox, right, you're just using your fingers. So that's a big difference. And I've seen people play Tekken on a hitbox or a mixed box, and they just prefer it for certain characters because, like I said, for example, doing instant wall running moves is just much easier.
Right.
So that's an example of a controller and keyboards are the same too in that sense. It's an example of a controller that gives you a considerable advantage as opposed to a traditional fight stick.
Right. Okay, let's get a little bit more technical now. I'll give you guys another example of an advantage on hitbox is the fact that on certain cases it can actually skip the neutral, right? So the dash does skip the neutral, but another example would be like crouching and then jumping with the hitbox would skip a neutral. So what I mean is, like, if you're using a joystick, okay, or a D-pad or whatever, if you want to crouch and then jump forward or whatever, you have to hold down, and then as you're transitioning to jump, you have to reach neutral with the joystick. So your character's gonna crouch, and then he's gonna stand, and then he's gonna jump. It's really fast. It's like a frame, but it's there, right? Same when you're using pad. But on a hitbox, it's one button, and then the jump forward is the other button. So basically, your character just skips that whole process. And like I said, it's just a frame, and it's just a little bit faster, and it is an advantage. But is it enough to say it's cheating, right? Like, this is what we're talking about, guys. Like, it's very small, so that's why it makes it so hard to figure out the rules. And honestly, man, this whole hitbox has been around for a long time, and as much as people joke around, it gives an advantage. It's not enough that people are like complaining about it. There's no one like advocating for it to be banned, right? It's just that when Daigo took it to the next level, that's what started all this with the macro buttons. That's where it started getting ridiculous, you know? Because like I said, even Hitbox, the regular Hitbox, doesn't use that last win function, right? It stops a lot of the exploiting on what you can do compared to joystick and pad. I feel like it's fair. But I think with the Gafro, once it gets to the last win, just any type... And you guys gotta remember too, people can easily upload software to even the regular Hitbox and set it to that last win if they want to. You know, even with the Brooks converter, there are ways to do that. And it's really hard for these tournament organizers to enforce. But I mean, people could have done it with durable buttons as well. I mean, we've gone this far without, you know, problems.
You could argue that, for example, you could do a small check at the beginning of a match, right, where a TO just comes there and holds left and right and sees what happens. You know, on the character select screen. But then people would come up with all kinds of toggles. It's
yeah,
like,
you have a toggle button.
Like, officer, look at this. Like, this is totally legit. Then gonna press it.
Don't give people ideas, man. Oh, you shouldn't even mention that. The toggle button.
I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that can go wrong, right? And again, that would add even more time to, say, running a bracket through pools or even top 16 top 8. The TO would just have to go there and fiddle with every controller to make sure that
Daigo loses match. I didn't think I'd have to use this. Flips on the toggle. I don't know, man.
And the thing is, there's already, well, not news, but reports, I guess, of people finding opponents in pools that were using modded controllers, PS4 controllers.
Right.
For example, I remember seeing this tweet about a guy that mixed up his controller with that of his opponents, and then when he went back home, he realized that his opponent, who was playing Gal, by the way, I don't know why Gal.
It's always Guile.
That the left trigger, instead of being 3 kicks, no, it wasn't the left trigger. I don't remember. But anyway, it was up in 3 kicks, so that the guy could do instant flash kicks from crouching.
Yeah.
Right, so like there's all kinds of things that you can do to controllers, which is really hard just to monitor and enforce, right? So I mean, the easiest way to fix this would be to actually put a mechanic in the game that prevents abusing this kind of stuff, right?
So
like for Street Fighter 6, like for Street Fighter 6, if or even Street Fighter 5, I mean, but for Street Fighter 6, let's say, if Capcom doesn't want you to hold back on the analog and press forward on the on the D-pad to do sonic booms and immediately charge, then they could implement the system that requires you to go back to neutral, for example.
Yeah.
Right. So that a stick is the same position as a normal pad, right, where you actually have to do the entire motion.
Yeah.
So that would be the ideal situation, so that no matter the control that you have, you cannot abuse it.
Yeah.
But lacking that, I guess, the community, well, not even the community, I guess, at the point it's Capcom, has to come to an agreement or something where it's reasonable enough so that all quote-unquote normal controllers are allowed without...
Right. So that's why, Amir, I want them to, like, I really feel like Capcom needs to hire or at least get someone to consult them and really educate them on this, because I mean, even like, I don't even know what the hell's going on. I've been trying to research this myself, because once again I don't use a hitbox, and even I'm discovering things I didn't know about that hitbox can do, or even this Gafro stick, right? And like I said, Daigo's just brought this to light for everyone. So I really feel like Capcom needs to be consulted by somebody who really understands this, reach out to them, and then they can make an educated ruling on this, and that's fair for everyone. Because we don't, like I said, not everyone uses a hitbox and these sticks so they can have some kind of advantage. They just use it because it's preference. You know, I mean, that's how it is, man. We don't want to block controllers from being used. We want everyone to feel comfortable and not being forced to spend hundreds of dollars on whatever they want to use. You know, banning pad would be terrible.
Yeah.
You know?
In fact, we have players that play on all sorts of controllers. There's one guy that plays Guilty Gear on Thrustmaster.
Initial T.
Unfortunately, he doesn't use the steering for directions.
Not
which
yet.
would have been extremely cool.
Not yet. Not yet, but yeah, I mean, like the whole, like I still use joystick myself, and people even ask me all the time, why you? They're asking me why don't I use a hitbox, you know? And I'm like, guys, I just like using a joystick. It's like bringing an arcade to your home, you know? Ever since I was young playing the arcades, I love that feeling. And people have to customize their sticks, you know, they have specific joysticks, the colors, everything. Some people just like to customize it. Some people just don't want buttons, right? Other people just like the comfort of playing on pad because you're able to lean forward really close to your screen when you play on pad. Some people like that, you know? So we don't, like I said, at the same time, we want it to be fair for our competitors. These guys are playing for thousands of dollars, right? And, you know, we don't want someone that have some kind of unfair software in their stick. So I think Capcom should definitely not try to let this slide and not talk about it again. I really do think that they should be consulted and figure out what to do. I think this is discussed about now, that something has to be done, because I really don't want this situation to happen again. Otherwise, we're going to have some real big problems. It'd be a real shame if there's some kind of knee-jerk reaction and they banned Hitbox completely. That would be a disaster. So, I don't know. Did we cover everything, Mir? We didn't have a script this time, so did we miss anything?
Yeah. No, I think we got everything. And I guess I should mention one other thing.
What's up?
Hitbox was in fact banned for a long time, and then they unbanned it. Like, it wasn't immediately allowed to be used.
Really?
Yeah, when it first released, right? It was actually banned for a while, and then they unbanned it, and now it's allowed in tournaments.
Interesting. And was it unbanned because of that SOCD cleaner that they add?
It might be, because I remember there were some problems with the original version, so it's possible that it was that allowed them to unban.
Right.
Because there was a lot of controversy around the Hitbox at the time.
Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, there still is, because we made this video, right? But
definitely.
Yeah, so like, it can take just that little bit to make a controller from fair to, more than fair. So.
Right. Okay, well, I guess let's start wrapping this up. I mean, guys, please check these links in the video description. I really want everyone to understand this, because I want to make sure that it was explained properly. Like I said, there are some good videos that will show you guys the differences. And maybe this might inspire you guys. Hey, maybe I should get a hitbox. It gives me an advantage. Let us know in the comments below what you guys feel about this. Like, what would you guys consider cheating? What would be the solution to this without causing, this crazy slippery slope? Because I know someone's gonna bring up something like, hey, Mir, what about someone with a disability? They need a macro button, and it's a very delicate subject. It really is. Yeah. But we do need to get the conversation going. And like I said, this has been talked about all week. So me and Mir just wanted to give our 2 cents in, I guess, on it. So look forward to you guys' comments, okay? So do us a solid, guys. Please subscribe to the channel. And of course, like the video. Get the word out there. And we'll see you guys again when something else comes up. All right? Take care, guys.